The doorbell rang just as my wife descended the stairs, fixing her hair in that mirror she never let me touch. I had just come home from the hospital. Our daughter, Lily, had been fighting for her life for a week. I slept on that cold vinyl couch beside her every single night, feeding her ice chips and praying the machines wouldn't start screaming. My eyes still burned from exhaustion. My mind was a wreck. I hadn't even taken my jacket off yet. And then came the knock. I opened the door, and there stood my best friend, Brandon. Brandon with the smug smirk and an expensive bouquet in hand. Red roses. Bold. Romantic. Inappropriate. He didn't even glance at me. His eyes locked on her like I was a ghost in my own house. "Move out of the way," she said behind me, heels clacking on the hardwood like war drums. "I need time with a real man." I didn't move. I couldn't. I thought maybe I misheard her. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe the sleep deprivation was playing with my head. But then she dropped the nuke. "You couldn't even get $120,000 to save our kid," she spat, venom on every syllable. "If it weren't for my parents' help, she'd be gone because of you." Brandon stepped inside, brushing past me, and she followed, her fingers already dancing along his forearm. She didn't even flinch when she saw my suitcase in the hallway, the hospital band still around my wrist. My daughter's teddy bear clutched in my hand like a lifeline. She didn't care. She wasn't even trying to hide it. They disappeared upstairs. I stood there like a corpse. I don't know how long I stayed that way, frozen between rage and disbelief. My knees wanted to give out. My fist wanted to go through the wall. But something inside me snapped. No, hardened. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I had begged doctors for 7 nights already. I had held Lily's hand when her fever hit 104. I had cried enough. Now, I was going to plan. You don't destroy a man while his child fights for her life and expect no consequences. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the garage, door cracked, a beer in one hand, my laptop in the other. I went through the security footage I had installed 2 years ago after a break-in scare. Turns out the real break-in had happened under my own roof. The timestamps were there. The kisses. The secret meetups when I was working double shifts. My friend pulling into the driveway when I wasn't supposed to be home. The betrayal wasn't just tonight. It was months. Maybe longer. The next morning, I made coffee like I always did. The smell filled the house. She came downstairs in a robe that wasn't hers. It was one I'd never seen before. Brandon's? I didn't ask. She looked around, confused. "Where's your suitcase?" "Gone," I said. She looked at me for the first time in what felt like a year. Her mascara was smudged. "What do you mean gone?" "I left you something upstairs." "On the bed." She bolted. I waited. 30 seconds later came the scream. She found the file, everything. Printed text between her and Brandon, photos from the security camera, a copy of my lawyer's letter, and a post-it on top. "You two deserve each other. Good luck explaining this to your parents." And Lily. When she stormed back down, the mask was gone. She wasn't pretending anymore. "You're seriously doing this? You're ruining this family because I needed something real? You were always weak, Josh. Always. I needed a man, not a charity case. You'll need a lawyer now," I said calmly. She laughed. "Oh, I have one. Brandon's uncle." "Perfect. Then I guess I'll see you both in court." That morning, I didn't just walk out. I burned the past behind me. The moment I stepped outside, I realized something terrifying. I didn't miss her. Not even a little. There wasn't a lump in my throat or an ache in my chest. There was only this eerie calm. The kind that comes after a storm tears through your house and all that's left is silence and splinters. I sat in my truck, gripped the steering wheel, and looked up at the window where I knew she stood watching me. And I smiled. You see, people like Rachel don't panic when you yell. They panic when you don't. When you just walk away, quietly, leaving a hole too clean to patch over. She wanted a reaction. She wanted a scene. She didn't get one. Not yet. The next stop was my sister's place. Sarah had been offering me her spare room for years, ever since she saw through Rachel's fake sweetness. "She's got wolf teeth behind that smile," she once told me. I thought she was being dramatic. Turns out Sarah was being generous. When I walked in, she took one look at me and didn't ask a single question. She just hugged me. And that was the first time I felt anything close to real comfort in weeks. I spent the next few hours emailing every lawyer on the list I'd compiled during the night. It wasn't just about divorce now. It was about custody. About protecting Lily from growing up thinking her mom's lies were normal, or worse, acceptable. Rachel hadn't called. Not once. But Brandon did. Yeah, the audacity. He texted me like we were still friends, like what happened wasn't nuclear. Hey man, I think we should talk this out. Let's not make this uglier than it has to be. Talk it out? He banged my wife while my daughter was hooked up to machines, and he wanted a coffee chat? I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the message to my lawyer. Later that day, Sarah knocked on my door holding a manila envelope. This came by courier. From Rachel. I didn't open it right away. I knew her handwriting. Even the way she looped her R's pissed me off now. But I opened it anyway. Inside were 6 pages of gaslighting, manipulation, and crocodile tears. She wrote about how we drifted apart, how she never intended for things to go that far with Brandon, how she needed to feel alive again. And then she dropped the real grenade. She wanted to fight for full custody. Because, get this, she claimed I was emotionally unstable, financially irresponsible, and had a history of outbursts. I laughed so loud Sarah came running. What's funny? She says I'm unstable, I said, waving the papers. She's the one screwing your best friend during a medical crisis, Sarah snapped. Exactly. That night, I drove back to the house not to see Rachel, but to pick up something I'd left behind, Lily's journal. She wasn't old enough to write full sentences, but she liked to draw in it. I didn't want Rachel tossing it in a rage fit. And I had another reason. I needed to see with my own eyes how low she could sink. I timed it perfectly. Brandon's car was in the driveway. Again. So I let myself in through the garage, my code still worked, and stood in the kitchen for exactly 10 seconds before I heard it. Whispered laughs. Stumbling footsteps upstairs. Then silence. And then I heard her voice. Playful. Warm. The way she used to speak to me. I locked the door. He won't be back. Brandon chuckled. You're cold. She replied, I'm practical. Cold? No. That wasn't cold. That was rotten. I walked out before I did something that would get me arrested. Let them rot in their fantasy. Because I was just getting started. 2 days passed. No calls. No apologies. Just silence from Rachel, like I was the one who needed to explain myself. I didn't. But I wanted answers. Real ones. So I hired a private investigator. His name was Leo Hayes. Ex-cop, now a freelancer with a reputation for digging deeper than most people were comfortable with. He had a worn leather jacket, nicotine breath, and the kind of voice that told you he'd seen enough marriages end in disaster to never risk one himself. You sure you want to know everything? Leo asked, raising one bushy eyebrow. I looked him dead in the eye. No, but I need to. 3 days later, he handed me a flash drive and said, open this alone. And don't punch any walls after. What I saw. It wasn't just Brandon. There were 3 others. 3. One from her yoga class. One from her job. And one guy I didn't even recognize. Looked like a damn TikTok influencer or something. Different cities. Different weekends. All while I was busting my asterisk trying to keep our home afloat and our daughter alive. She didn't just cheat. She lived in it. Swam in it. Decorated her world with betrayal and smiled while doing it. One video showed her in our kitchen, pouring wine for that guy from her office. She laughed, she laughed, when he asked if I'd ever come home early. Josh is too predictable, she said, swirling her glass. He thinks loyalty is a personality. He laughed back. You're bad. She smirked. I'm bored. That word. Bored. I gave her everything. Every ounce of energy I had. And she was bored? I watched all of it. Every image. Every timestamped betrayal. I didn't cry. Not once. I just sat there, the fury burning colder by the minute. Because I realized something deeper than the rage. I've been loving a ghost. A well-dressed shell with a hollow center. And now I was free. But freedom doesn't mean peace. Not yet. The next morning, I met with my lawyer, Scott Adler, a shark in a tailored suit with ice in his veins. She's going to fight dirty, I told him. He smiled like he'd been waiting his whole life for this case. Good. I like dirty. We began the countersuit. Not just divorce, but full custody, with a petition for supervised visits. And this part was my favorite, an affidavit outlining her affairs, complete with the footage, timestamps, and Leo's report. Rachel had no idea what was coming. That night, my phone buzzed. Finally, her name. Rachel. I didn't answer. She texted instead. Rachel, I know we're hurting, but let's not involve lawyers. We can be civil. Civil? I replied with one sentence. Check your inbox. Inside, she'd find a PDF copy of the full legal filing. 10 minutes later, she called. I let it ring. Then came another message. Rachel, This is insane. You're ruining Lily's life just because you're bitter. I stared at the screen, half expecting her to apologize, to backpedal. But no remorse. Just her usual victim act. I put the phone down and walked into Lily's room at Sarah's house. She was sleeping, her tiny hand wrapped around that same teddy bear. I sat beside her and whispered, "You're the only thing that matters. I promise I'll protect you. No matter what." Rachel thought this was about revenge. It wasn't. It was about rebuilding the future without a liar poisoning it. Let her squirm. The war was just beginning. Courtroom lighting is a strange thing. It makes everything feel colder, like you're standing inside a morgue rather than a place of justice. Rachel strutted in like she was walking a runway, dressed in white, no less. White. The irony practically burned my eyes. Brandon sat 2 rows behind her. He wore sunglasses indoors, like he thought that somehow disguised the guilt pouring off him like cheap cologne. I sat beside Scott, my lawyer, who had already laid out the paperwork like a man sharpening blades. He didn't say much, just gave me a slight nod, like, "Watch this." Rachel opened with a performance. That's the only word for it. She cried. She sniffled. She told the judge I was unstable, cold, emotionally unavailable, and that I had abandoned her in her time of need. She actually cried while describing how hard it was to raise a sick child on her own. I almost laughed. She left out the part where I spent 7 nights in a hospital chair, spoon-feeding applesauce to our daughter while she was letting Brandon comfort her in the master bedroom. But the judge listened politely. And then Scott stood up. "Your Honor," he said smoothly, "we have reason to believe the plaintiff has deliberately misled this court regarding her behavior and the nature of the defendant's absence from the home." Then he dropped it. The folder. The photos. The footage. Everything. Rachel's face cracked like glass under a hammer. She stood up, flailing her arms like she was swatting invisible bees. "This is out of context. He's twisting everything." But it was all there. The texts where she made jokes about our daughter's hospital stay. The late-night videos with Brandon. The timeline that made it clear she hadn't just strayed. She left long ago, emotionally and physically. The judge raised a hand. "Mrs. Carter, sit down." I'd never seen Rachel pale like that. Not even during Lily's worst nights. She sat. Brandon was already gone, literally stood up and walked out the moment the evidence surfaced. Probably ran to save what little reputation he had left. "Coward." The judge spoke again. "Given the compelling nature of the defendant's evidence and the clear indications of repeated infidelity and dishonesty, I'm issuing a temporary custody order. Full custody to Mr. Carter, with supervised visitation for Mrs. Carter, pending final review." She looked at me. No tears now. Just pure hatred. As if I had ruined everything. As if I was the one who had lied, cheated, humiliated. It was almost funny. After the hearing, she cornered me in the hallway. No crowd. No judge. Just her and me and years of unspoken venom. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You think you're the hero in this?" I leaned in, keeping my voice low. "No. I'm the guy cleaning up the mess you made." She scoffed. "Brandon's not going anywhere. Neither is your supervised visit schedule," I shot back. And with that, I walked away. I could feel her eyes drilling into the back of my head the entire way down the hallway. But I didn't turn around, because I'd already seen enough. That night, I tucked Lily into bed. She was giggling over some cartoon, completely unaware of the war being waged around her. And for the first time in months, I felt something real. Peace. Not because I'd won anything, but because I was finally fighting for someone who deserved it. 2 weeks after the courtroom ambush, I returned to the house, not to stay, not to forgive, but to gather the last of Lily's things and finalize the division of property. We'd agreed, through lawyers, of course, that I'd get the house. She didn't want it. Said it held bad memories. The irony? She made those memories. I pulled into the driveway and stared at the front door for a long time. Everything looked the same, white shutters, dead lawn, wind chimes still hanging by the porch. But the place felt hollow. Like even the walls were ashamed. I stepped inside. Silence. The kind that doesn't come with peace, just awkward tension, like the air was holding its breath. I walked into the living room and noticed the wine stain still on the rug, same one she laughed about while some other man sat on our couch. She never even tried to clean it. Why would she? She never planned on staying. Upstairs, I grabbed Lily's favorite blanket from her room and a few of her books. Then I went into the master bedroom, which felt like walking into the scene of a crime. Her perfume still lingered, and for a second, I hated myself for missing that smell. I opened the drawer on her side of the bed. Inside was a stack of old birthday cards I'd written to her over the years. Some handwritten notes. Polaroids from vacations. I stared at them, realizing she had kept everything I ever gave her, only to throw it all away for cheap flings and sugar-coated lies. And then I saw it. Tucked beneath an old scarf was a burner phone, one I'd never seen before. Curiosity got the better of me. I turned it on. No passcode. Texts? Hundreds. Not just with Brandon. More men. More names. Some messages dated back years. She was planning weekend getaways while I was working overtime shifts. One text said, "He's boring, predictable, but I need him for now. My daughter deserves a stable home until she's older." I felt like someone had socked me in the stomach. I knew she'd cheated, but this was a strategy. She used me. Deliberately. Coldly. Not just as a husband, but as a placeholder. A provider. A body to fill a space until her daughter was old enough to understand divorce. Except the divorce came sooner than she expected. I took photos of the texts. Forwarded everything to Scott. Then I packed the phone back in the drawer and walked out without another word. As I was locking the door behind me, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "I heard you're playing dirty. Watch your back, Josh." I stared at the message. No name, no threat too direct, but the timing was no coincidence. Maybe it was one of her flings. Maybe Rachel was getting desperate. Either way, it was just another confirmation. She wasn't done. She'd lost the courtroom battle. Now she wanted to win in chaos. That night, I put Lily to bed again. Her breathing was soft, steady. I sat beside her and brushed her hair off her forehead. And I whispered, "I won't let her drag you through this." I meant it. Because now I knew. I wasn't just dealing with betrayal. I was dealing with someone who wore masks so well, even I had forgotten what her real face looked like. But that was over now. The masks were off. The games were on. And I was ready. By the end of the month, Rachel's claws started to show. She filed an emergency motion claiming I was alienating Lily from her. Said I was manipulating the child emotionally and refusing her visitation rights. It was total garbage. Every visit she had with Lily, supervised or not, was logged, recorded, and documented. I was following the court's orders to the letter. But Rachel wasn't after the truth, she was after leverage. She thought if she stirred enough chaos, I'd crack. Instead, I set a trap. With Scott's guidance, I filed a formal response packed with evidence, video recordings of every visit, timestamped, showing Rachel canceling appointments, arriving late, scrolling her phone while Lily asked for attention. We even included one clip where Lily asked her why she was always mean to Daddy. Rachel had ignored it, didn't even flinch, just kept reapplying lipstick. Scott attached everything in a response labeled "pattern of neglect and emotional disinterest" and had it sent directly to the court. No warning to her legal team. Just fire in an envelope. She didn't see it coming. The court scheduled a hearing within days. On the morning of the hearing, I arrived calm, dressed in a navy suit Sarah had bought me after the first hearing. "It makes you look like the man she never deserved," she said. I wore it with pride. Rachel walked in wearing black this time. Dramatic. Her eyes darted around the courtroom like she was searching for backup. Brandon wasn't there. I guess he finally decided to tap out. Or maybe he realized his reputation couldn't survive being the side piece to a woman who couldn't even win over her own daughter. The judge didn't waste time. He was tired of the games, the filings, the drama. "Miss Carter, we've reviewed your motion," he said sternly. "And the defense's evidence contradicts your claims entirely." Rachel blinked, lips parted like she couldn't quite believe this wasn't going her way. The judge continued, "Effective immediately, all future visitation will require professional supervision and therapy sessions. If we see continued patterns of manipulation or neglect, we will consider reducing parental rights further." Her jaw clenched. I could practically hear her teeth grinding. She tried to speak. "Your Honor, I'm the mother." "You're also the petitioner," the judge snapped. "And you're abusing that right." Case dismissed. Gavel down. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just stood up and walked out with my lawyer. Outside, I finally let out a long breath I didn't know I was holding. Scott clapped a hand on my shoulder. "She just dug her own grave," he said. "Let her keep digging," I replied. But Rachel wasn't done. Later that night, I got another message. "Rachel, I want to talk. Alone. No lawyers. For Lily's sake." Sarah saw me staring at the phone and narrowed her eyes. "You're not actually considering it, are you?" "I just want to see what she'll say. Record everything." I met Rachel at a public park. Neutral ground. She showed up 10 minutes late, looking like she hadn't slept in a week. Her makeup was half done, hair wild like she'd just been crying or screaming. I didn't come here to fight, she said, voice soft. Then don't. She took a deep breath. I made mistakes, but I'm still her mother. You can't erase me. I'm not trying to, I said calmly. But I'll protect her from you. If that means keeping her at a distance until you grow up, so be it. You're enjoying this. No, I'm surviving it. She paused, eyes twitching. I could ruin you, Josh. You already tried. And then I turned around and walked away again. The difference this time? She knew I meant it. And I didn't look back. 3 days later, I received an anonymous envelope in my mailbox. No return address. No name. Just my name scrawled in messy handwriting and sealed shut with cheap tape. I opened it cautiously, half expecting more legal threats or some childish jab from Rachel, but what I found inside knocked the air out of my lungs. Photos. Printed. Physical photos. Rachel and Brandon. Rachel and the yoga guy. Rachel and another man I hadn't even seen before. But this time, the timestamps weren't from the past. They were from last week, while the court had her on supervised visits. While she was supposed to be proving her stability and dedication as a mother, she was out repeating the same self-destructive cycle like a scratched vinyl track stuck on betrayal. One photo showed her in some hotel lobby with a guy who looked barely out of college. Another showed her kissing Brandon. Yes, again, outside a parking garage at 10:47 p.m. And the final shot? Rachel, drunk, slumped across a bar counter, texting while a man whispered something in her ear. Attached was a note, typed in plain font. If she lies to you, she'll lie to the court. Thought you should know. Hey, friend. I stared at the photos for 20 minutes straight. Was it Leo? Was it Brandon's jealous ex? I didn't know. Didn't matter. Because this was gold. I scanned the photos and sent them to Scott within the hour. This is a gift from the gods, he texted back. We're filing a motion tomorrow. The next morning, Rachel must have sensed the shift. She texted me again, something almost eerie in its sudden sweetness. Rachel, thinking of Lily today. Do you think we could plan a joint birthday celebration next month? She deserves both of us there. I didn't reply. Instead, we filed the new evidence. We labeled it violation of character testimony and deceptive conduct post-ruling. Our judge scheduled an emergency review. Rachel had no idea what was coming, but I was already preparing Lily's favorite cake and booking a clown for her birthday. I'd celebrate the way a real parent does, without lies, without games, just love and stability. At the review hearing, Rachel showed up wearing fake sincerity like a Halloween costume. She sat down with her lawyer and smiled at me like we were co-parents, like we were united. Then Scott stood up and said, Your Honor, we have new evidence. Recent photos showing the petitioner engaging in behavior that violates the court's trust, her supervised visitation terms, and her own sworn testimony. Rachel's face froze mid-smile. She looked like she'd been slapped with a chair. The judge flipped through the photos slowly, methodically, like he wanted her to squirm with each turn. I see, he said, voice cold. Rachel's lawyer mumbled something about invasions of privacy, but the judge shut it down with one raised hand. Enough. This behavior is consistent, troubling, and unacceptable. I'm suspending all visitation rights pending psychiatric evaluation. This court will no longer tolerate manipulation disguised as motherhood. Rachel finally cracked. In front of everyone. She stood up, face flushed red, voice shaking. He did this. He's poisoning her against me. He's turning everyone against me. He's obsessed. But the judge just banged the gavel and dismissed her outburst like the wind. That was the day the courtroom stopped being neutral. It saw her for what she really was. Not a grieving mother. Not a victim. Just a woman who thought the world owed her forgiveness without accountability. That night, Lily and I watched a movie together, her tiny hand in mine, popcorn everywhere, her laugh echoing through the living room. I didn't need vengeance. I already had everything I wanted sitting beside me. Free of lies. Free of poison. Just us. 3 weeks passed. No texts. No calls. No surprise visits. Rachel had gone silent. I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd finally accepted that her grip on our lives was over. But then, one morning, as I was packing Lily's lunch for school, I heard a knock at the door. It was the mailman. In his hand, another envelope. This one wasn't anonymous. The handwriting was hers. I almost threw it away without reading it. Almost. But something told me I needed to see what kind of delusion she was clinging to now. Inside was a handwritten letter. 7 pages. Blue ink. her familiar cursive dancing across the page like she still thought she was writing from some elegant pedestal. She started with fake warmth. I know you must hate me, but please read this with an open heart. Then came the revisionist history. I never meant to hurt you. I was confused. Lonely. You were always working. Always distracted. I didn't feel seen. No mention of the affairs. No mention of the hotel rooms or the burner phone. Just soft, manipulative language trying to paint me as the villain for not being enough, not doing enough, not sacrificing enough. Page 4 was the real gem. Brandon left. He said I'm a mess. That I need help. Maybe he's right. But I still deserve a chance with my daughter. And finally, on page 6. Maybe if we had one last dinner. Just the three of us. Like old times. Maybe we could fix this. For Lily. I folded the letter neatly and dropped it straight into the trash. That was the thing about Rachel. She always wanted to hit reset, pretend the past didn't happen, sweep the blood under the rug and throw a smile over it. But this time, there was no rug big enough to hide what she'd done. Later that night, as I sat in bed reading Lily her favorite bedtime story, one about a dragon who learned to protect instead of burn, I realized something. Rachel was the dragon. Beautiful, powerful, but destructive. She didn't know how to love without scorching everything around her. And me? I used to be the knight trying to tame her. Now, I was just the father trying to raise a little girl who'd never mistake fire for warmth. The final twist came a week later. Rachel was admitted to a mental health facility. Her sister, Dana, called me voice shaking, unsure if she was angry or relieved. She finally snapped, Dana said. Said everyone abandoned her. Blamed the courts. Blamed you. Even blamed Lily. That last part made me grip the phone so tight it nearly cracked. She'll be there for a while, Dana continued. Doctors say she's paranoid, unstable, not violent, just broken. I didn't say anything. What could I say? She had burned every bridge and then cried about the smoke. But deep down, a part of me still grieved, not for her, but for the woman I thought I married. The one I imagined building a life with. That woman never really existed. She was just a projection I created to survive the early years. The real Rachel? She was a warning, not a memory. That weekend, I took Lily to the beach. We built sandcastles, chased seagulls, and watched the sun dip below the waves. As we sat in the sand, she looked up at me and said, Daddy. Yeah, honey. Do dragons ever turn nice? I smiled. Sometimes. But some dragons aren't meant to be tamed. They just teach us how to build stronger castles. She nodded, satisfied. That was all the closure I needed. No more letters. No more traps. Just sand, salt, and the sound of my daughter's laughter filling the air like a promise that we had already won.